Very, very good evening. I'm Cicely George, the Executive Director. Do any of you know of Thai, Dubai from before? Any new people? I know a lot of faces, but who's new here? Oh, really? I mean, okay. Because I've seen you. Yeah, we've spoken. Yeah. So it's great to have you here for yet another session from us. Continuous adaptive risk and trust assessment. Such an important and vital part of every company, business, startup, and I would say life itself. If you think about it, we can use these even in our life relationships. Both adaptive risk and trust is so fundamental, and keeping it continuously running is key. So, today, to everyone who made it to have Carta here, which is what it is all about. Feji is going to take us through some amazing things. Before we start, just for the few new people, I'll say a few things about Thai Dubai, and I'd also like to share about a couple of programs that we've launched. So, Thai is an organization that started in Silicon Valley in 1992. It was a conversation that started with a few successful entrepreneurs. Today, it's more than 64 chapters in 14 countries. So Thai really functions, in my opinion, at the heart of an ecosystem of startups, founders, the entrepreneurial community, where you find the most vibrant mindsets. You have founders, you have outliers, investors. We work with accelerators, incubators, government. So we really sort of at the heart of it, because we are very collaborative in that sense. And one of the things that we do is a mentorship program, which is an absolutely brilliant program for scaling founders. So, this is when we map you to a mentor that is already one of our charter members, and he becomes your mentor for a period of 12 months. So, you pitch, you share your idea, you share your challenges, because that's what we want to help you with. And then you get mapped to a mentor, then you get into a cohort, and then that runs for a period of 12 years. So keep your eyes out. It's really valuable for scaling companies. And the other program that we have is the Thai Women MENA program. So if you know any women founders, I think we have a minority today. I think it's also probably the timing, they're all busy. So it helps women founders. We represent 5 regions across the MENA. What started with just UAE, over the last 6 years, we've been able to expand presence in Saudi, Egypt, rest of Middle East, Emiratis track separately. So they come into the program, they get shortlisted, we mentor them, they get into pitch competition, huge platform at GITEX, at the Global Summit. We've been able to give 100,000 equity free money, etc. So it's an amazing program. We've had some really amazing founders come through it. And we'll just show you a quick highlight of last year. So if you know any women founders, please share about this program. It uh, always adds value. So do share about the program if you know of any founder that could really use that platform for success. The other one that we have is the Thai U program, which works on early. So the Thai Women program takes registered licensed businesses, and women need to hold a minimum of 33% equity in the business and be operational here. So that's the criteria. The other program, the Thai U program, we work with youth, the early stage ideas. So it needn't be registered, it needn't be licensed, but you have a great idea because that's where really the innovation of tomorrow lies. And we've been able to sort of take the winners to Silicon Valley, expose them to a huge platform where they get access to boot camps, pitching, and possibly raising funding. We've had some really nice ideas come through, become businesses, then they actually raise funding. And I mean, the one of our winners from 2022 is doing Vipassana. I don't know if you know, those are things that people a lot older do, and he's only 24 years old. So he's done his fundraising, he's done his company setup, and it's really running on its own. And they are mapped to mentors as well, because that really transforms these early stage ideas. So again, if you know any founders in universities, if you have any connections in universities, we'd love to sort of please connect with me. We'd love to sort of connect and take this program to them. So it's a little bit long video, but we have a very good story from one of our founders who won the program. So it really shows the full value of the whole program.
Hi everyone, my name is Rivan Sabah and I am the Emirati winner of Thai University Regional Championship. I was inspired to join Thai competition because I believe in the power of entrepreneurship and that driving future success. In addition, Thai has a strong reputation in the market, so it's a great opportunity for me to showcase my idea and connect with subject matter experts in this field and also access the rich mentorship database. So eSol is my startup. eSol is an aggregate of receipts and invoices. Basically, we help businesses to transform paper receipts into digital receipts, and we provide them with item-level data insights from transactional data in terms of providing valuable customer experience and enhancing their customer journey to be more personalized. The overall experience was incredible. From meeting talented people from around the world, connecting with the right subject matter experts and mentors who are sharing with us the best practices to become the entrepreneurs ready to scale their businesses. In addition, the opportunity to pitch on such a prestigious stage was an unforgettable experience as an Emirati, growing in district region, been to different incubation accelerator programs. This opportunity has broadened my knowledge in various areas and also provided me with different trends, best practices that I can incorporate in my business. We have seen increased prominent examples of minority representations in different sectors. I believe the collaborations between the government, private sector, and different entities and programs that are being rolled out has supported the Emirati representation in terms of providing the right infrastructure, funding, investment, and so on. And Emiratis in general have been promoting the economic growth and fostering local digital competencies in different innovation areas. So I graduated from UAE University with a bachelor's degree in engineering. University for sure provided me with different development opportunities from sessions to workshops to connecting with the right mentors. But on the other side, juggling between being an entrepreneur and student wasn't an easy task. But with the right people, the right support group, it has helped me to further shape myself and look at those challenges as opportunities. I've met a couple of mentors, and one of them is Sergio. Their guidance and support enhanced my perspective in terms of how can I further refine the overall business model of ESOL and also how can I deliver a more compelling pitch. So I'm very grateful for their support and for their time with me in providing the right insights, the right guidance, and also contributed to my growth as an entrepreneur. I've learned many stuff, and every day is a learning experience. And number one, I would say, as a tech entrepreneur, how can I further leverage on the agility principles and integrate it into my daily practices, my daily leadership style, and so on. So agility is very critical to stay up to date with the fast-moving environment in the startup industry, especially in tech. In addition, the importance of keeping it as simple as possible. How do I deliver a compelling narrative in terms of delivering the right product market fit and the unique value proposition of my startup? My advice to young entrepreneurs is to stay focused on your mission and to always be ready to pivot. You need to be flexible with your decisions. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Always initiate, leverage on your existing network, and take the best out of it. Never be afraid to unleash your full potential and نحن قدها to compete on a global scale and showcase our potential as Emiratis.
Yeah, I think it really shows the full picture of what the journey is about. So if you do know anyone, do connect us. The easiest way to be a part of this community is by really following Thai Dubai on every channel. It's just Thai Dubai on Facebook, X, YouTube. And there's a WhatsApp community that we have. And if you want to be updated about all the events, please do join. And we're generally quiet. We love to have more chatty people there. And I want to do a very special thank you to all our charter members who form the backbone and make all the amazing happens. And especially to our director of events, who has been aptly named the Events Messiah, which I have promised to use for the rest of the year. That's Bianca. Before we start, I would like you, I know everybody's waiting for Peggy from Carta. So I will do a very brief introduction. Peggy is the regional lead for startups in the Middle East at Carta. In this role, he drives go-to-market efforts for equity management solutions, playing a pivotal role in expanding Carta's presence in the region. And I'm sure a lot of you know what Carta is. Carta manages over $2 trillion in equity for nearly 2 million people globally and is trusted by more than 30,000 companies, over 5,000 investment funds, and 500,000 employees for cap table management, compensation management, liquidity, venture capital solutions, and more. Prior to joining Carta, Peggy held roles at Salesforce and successfully launched and scaled several startups, including a PR agency, a dating app, and Dubai's largest health and wellness active community. With over 10 years of diverse experience, Peggy specializes in managing complex deals, building strategic partnerships, and supporting startups in scaling their operations across various industries. I won't keep it take any longer. I'm sure, Peggy, you'll keep it engaging. I'm sure there'll be a session at the end where he will encourage you to have questions. Please take it away, Peggy.
Evening, everyone. Hi. How's everyone doing? Good. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Thai Dubai, for giving me this opportunity to be here today. Let's get a pulse of the room. How many founders here? Okay. Okay. How many investors? Okay. How many ecosystem leaders or enablers? Okay, awesome. Anyone I missed out? Cool, awesome. These slides coming. Oh, need my finger. Okay, so Just a quick word from our lawyers. Please don't take anything I say as legal advice. Please be responsible for your own decisions you make. So what are we going to cover today? I'll briefly talk about Carta, who we are for the people who don't know about Carta. We'll talk about cap tables, data rooms. We'll share some data and insights that Carta publishes. Just a caveat on this. This data is completely public. We publish it every quarter. You can access it online. It is skewed towards US data because naturally most of the venture and startup data is in the US. But we typically find about 6 to 8 months later, it kind of flows into our region. We are working very hard to build data for the Middle East so we can really show what's happening here as well. We just don't have the sample size right now, but hopefully as the venture ecosystem grows and develops and we see more VC funding come into the region, we'll be able to publish this data as well. We'll talk a bit about financing instruments that startups can use in order to raise funding, some tools for success, and then we'll leave some room for Q&A and networking at the end. But please, if you do have any questions in between, jump in and let's keep it interactive. So this session is for you guys to keep it as valuable as possible. So feel free to jump in. Before I do that, let's watch a little video.
Start up. The world's greatest ideas all began with these two little words. 7 letters, which, much like the ragtag teams of entrepreneurs they describe, inspire something like magic when brought together. 2 words, joining hands to provoke greatness, challenge the status quo, and carry the promise of change. Startup. But for many entrepreneurs, that promise suffocates too fast. It loses oxygen, buried under the weight of endless administration and paperwork, option pools, valuations, financial reports, compensation, taxes, and perhaps scariest of all, fundraising. It's too much. Inevitably, the founder becomes lost in this labyrinth. The dream fades into cells on a spreadsheet, and before they know it, the same 2 little words that once fueled their dreams now prevent them from falling asleep at night. That's why Carta was built. Created by real founders and baked for over a decade in the oven of Silicon Valley, Carta is now proudly the world's first software platform that speaks the language of building from scratch, no matter where in the world you're doing it. So whether you're managing your cap table in Brazil, prepping for investors in London, or modeling your next growth stage in Singapore, Carta's founder-first platform can conduct the silent symphony of equity administration for you, so you and your team can do what you do best, keep dreaming. Wherever you are, we speak startup.
Okay, so a trip down memory lane. How did Carta start? About 13 years ago, if you wanted to buy a piece of a private company, you had to spend about $20,000 in legal fees, and it will take you about 4 weeks. You'll get a paper stock certificate through the post, and it will say how many shares you have, and it represents the ownership of your company. So Carta's first innovation in the market was to actually digitize this. So the company was initially called eShares, electronic shares. So basically it was a software platform for you to be able to issue shares in the private market. In the public market, it was super easy. You just go online and you buy a piece of Google stock in a couple of clicks. In the private market, that didn't exist. So that was the initial innovation. And then through there, it grew to be a cap table management solution, and then adding more and more capabilities for the startup. So that extends from, if you think of the journey of the startup, your cap table is kind of your single source of truth, your bread and butter, which is your investable story to investors, right? Then we kind of expanded into issuing employee equity. Who's thought about issuing equity to their employees or has an ESOP plan for their startup? Okay, awesome. We can talk a little bit about that as well. Not so common in this region, but the data shows, and it's very ubiquitous in Silicon Valley in Europe, If you have a structured employee stock ownership program, the valuation of your startup is going to be greater. You're going to be more investable for investors because you can attract and retain your talent through a structured ESOP program. And then fundraising, right? The most fun part of startups. So fundraising isn't easy. As a founder, you want to be focused on, building your product, innovating, getting to MVP, iterating, coming up with bold ideas, building your team. You don't want to be focused on the boring stuff, right? That's what we love to do. We love to take care of the boring stuff. What are the steps in the fundraising process? What kind of reporting do Series A investors expect? What should I expect after a fundraising round? What are my legal and financial obligations? Typically what happens is founders neglect these questions or neglect these points until it comes later down the line. And so hopefully I'll share a little bit around how you can avoid some of these mistakes and how you can get your books ready to make the decision as easy as possible for investors. So what does the ecosystem look like, right? You have the private company or the startup in the center, and these are typically the people who you're engaged with. Your corporate secretary provider to incorporate your business, wherever that may be. Your employees, obviously, your law firm. If you're fundraising, you'll be working very closely with your law firm. Your investor, ultimately, whether they're individuals, angels, or later down the line, VCs. And then, again, as you go through your startup journey, your accountancy firm for audit purposes. And really where Carta sits is kind of bringing this ecosystem together. The orange line shows who we serve directly. So we have solutions for the startup and then for the investor as well. But then everyone in the ecosystem can kind of look into the cap table. So we're kind of bringing everyone together. Historically, this is done through Excels. This is done through long chains of emails, no visibility. And so this is kind of your dream team, if you like, when you're coming through your fundraising. Just to put some scale and kind of an idea of what Carta does, we're about 40,000 startups on our platform. And for me, the figure that stands out is around 65% of venture capital raised goes through companies on Carta. So really it's a sign of compliance and visibility for investors to if you're on Carta for your fundraising. So let's take a step back. Who knows what a cap table is? Who's seen a cap table? Who already has built out their cap table for their startup? Does anyone want to share kind of what it looks like? Okay, who's raised funding already? Who's got some checks in? No one? Who's thought about approaching investors? Okay. No, any conversations? No, okay. So when you're approaching an investor, what kind of conversations are you having?
Right now it's mostly idea, where I am, market, stuff like that. So that's why I haven't raised anything.
Got you. Okay. Anyone else want to share? Okay, so the cap table, initially when you start, it's very simple, right? If you're a sole owner, it's 100% you own the company. If you have co-founders, then you have splits between your co-founders. But as the company grows and scales, the cap table is going to evolve over time. And so your cap table represents the startup's investable story. It's almost like the kind of the market makes as it's growing. So it's always very interesting when you look at if you look at, Kareem or any of these larger property fund, you look at their cap tables, you can see you can see their journey just through how the cap table was changed over time. Okay? So essentially what a cap table is, it gives a detailed breakdown of who owns the ownership stake of the company. Okay? And this can be broken down into different types of shares. It can have different security types. It can be safe notes. It can be preferred shares. There can be convertible debt. Different types of ways of raising money, but also different types of securities. So options for employees. Very typically, you don't give employees preferred shares, so shares into your business. You give them options. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like as well. The cap table manages the ownership stakes and keeps track of every security the company has issued. So whether they're shares, stock options, warrants, safe notes, convertibles. So this is kind of the starting point. What do investors zero in on? So when you're approaching investors for investment, the cap table is one of the main documents they're going to want to know about and want you to explain. But they'll zero in on a few things. So what is the ownership percentage of the key founders? You mentioned the criteria of 30% for the female founders before letting them in. There's a reason for that, right? If you're pitching, a lot of time investors invest in the people at the early stage, right? But if you only own like 10% of the business, then that represents quite a bit of risk for the investor. So they're going to look in to see, how much have you been diluted already? Maybe you've already given away a big chunk of your business and you haven't even started yet. It's not very good. So that's one thing they'll looking at. Equally, they'll look at vesting schedules of your key employees. So if you have co-founders with no vesting schedule, then it represents a risk as well. A vesting schedule, just to explain, is essentially you can either have time-based or performance-based vesting, which means that if we take time-based, typically there's a 4-year vesting schedule, and after 1 year it unlocks, and then after every month or every quarter, a little bit more of the option or share is issued to the person. You do this so from day one, someone doesn't say ciao, and leaves with all the equity, right? So it's a risk mitigation mechanism that you can use, and so they're going to look at that as well. Have any founders or employees moved on? We call this dead equity. Are they just, someone is on the cap table, but they're no longer in the picture? So that's going to be a risky kind of thing for the investor as well, because let's say they represent 20% and they're no longer in the business. That's not being diluted later on. How much left is in your option pool? So your option pool is the amount you allocate for your employees. Typically in this region, it's around 10 to 12%. So if we set up a business, you and I, we set up a business, the first thing we as best practice we should do is put 10 to 12% for our employees. And this 10 to 12% can then be allocated across however many employees that we start to bring in. We don't have to allocate all 12% from day one, but as we grow and scale, we can allocate bit by bit. But that's typically around best practice. Around 50% of that we leave for refresher grants. So a refresher grant is when that 4-year period finishes. We can then top up. Let's give an example. I have a superstar engineer who my tech platform is like everything is based upon this engineer and his 3-person team. I want to incentivize them to stay with me for the next 4 years, because if he leaves, I don't have a business. I issue him options for him to have a sense of ownership of the business. He owns a part of the business, and every month he stays, he gets a little bit more, and after 4 years, I can top that up. That's called a refresher grant. So this may sound like, oh, we don't need to think about that right now. That's in the future. A lot of founders make that mistake. These are things that will then come and bite you afterwards when in 4 years' time or in 3 years' time when you're doing your next round. So it's good to think about this stuff now. The cap table also shows the turnover within the business. Are there any cultural issues? If there's people leaving, if there's a high turnover, again, it can spark some red flags. Number 5 is interesting. What are the other investors in the company, and how much do they hold? Typically investors, they like to co-invest with other strategic investors. Either their pal or someone that they have a good relationship with, or there's a strategic synergy between their investments. So they're going to look at what other investors are on your cap table as well. And then are there any surprising preferences or obligations? So, does one investor, for example, have really, extra rights, and they might challenge you for that as well. So again, how you negotiate with one investor is going to impact your ability to negotiate with other investors. Any questions on this? Is this landing? Is this making sense? Yeah? Cool. Awesome. So let's go into data rooms. So by no means is this kind of an exhaustive list, but this is typically what we see from investors. Feel free to take pictures, by the way, guys. I forgot to say, we'll share these slides afterwards with everyone, but feel free to take pictures in between. So obviously you need your deck, market and competitor research, customer LOIs. So if you're really getting intent from customers that they want to purchase, it's fantastic. We'd love to see that. If you're pre-revenue, if you haven't put any, shown any revenue for the business, LOIs are great. Product details, any IP you may have. Your team, the backgrounds, the employment contracts, and the stock and option grants, as I was referring to earlier. Formation documents, of course, your cap table, and then any financials. So just a point on financials, early stage startups, it's very easy to do these beautiful hockey stick projections that you're going to be a unicorn in 4 years. And it becomes, quite an easy task. I can have an ice cream shop tomorrow, which is going to be a unicorn by just manipulating Excel a little bit. Obviously, that's not going to go down, right? So really focus on what are the core revenue drivers, what's driving your growth, what are the milestones and that you're working towards, right? So really try to break it down, particularly if you're pre-revenue. I'm not going to go too much into the details of let me take a step back. So data and insights, right? We have a lot of data and insights around fundraising activity. Again, we can share these reports afterwards. There's a lot of data in there. Not going to bore you with the data, but essentially, you may have heard in the ecosystem that VC funding is coming down. Yes, partially true, but we had a huge spike during the COVID era, 2021, 2022. So that was kind of an abnormal period where there was a lot of investment going into startups. That's since dropped, and now we're kind of stabilizing now. But data and charts are always very funny, right? So if you take out the COVID era, actually we're still trending on the right path. So, it's not all bad news. There is still momentum picking up in the market. And this just, again, shows down the amount of rounds and cash raised globally by quarter. So you can see the past 8 quarters have been pretty consistent. So what happened was, around that time, valuations also increased a lot. And then the follow-on valuations in the past year or so have been much lower because the valuations were increased a lot. So you have a lot of down rounds in this past year and a half. Again, that's representative of the higher valuations we had during the COVID period. Yeah, I'm not going to go into all of that. So yeah, key things to note. Valuations have been increasing steadily, especially around the seed and Series A stage. Round activity at the seed stage has decreased, and then the later stage there was some pretty crazy activity, but it's not really relevant for now. Another thing to call out is if you're preparing for Series A, the runway has increased as well. So where it used to be around 12 to 16 months, now it's more around 18 to 24 months. So the call out here is if you're raising funding for your Series A, make sure you're raising enough. So as you can see here, we're more towards the 2-year mark now, from price seed to Series A and Series A to Series B. It's increased over the past year or so. Good news is that M&A activity has picked up. Again, a sign that the market's going in the right direction. But let's come a little bit closer to home now. Let's talk about co-founder and equity splits. So what's interesting here is that in 2015, 17% of startups had a single founder. Now, in the last year, solo founders comprise 35%. So we're seeing way more people going out and doing their own thing and being more bullish, which is great. Two founders, 37%. And then you can see the larger teams, 3 founders plus, significantly has reduced compared to the around 9 years ago. What does the split of equity look like between these founders? 2 founders, kind of 50-50. 3 founders, you have 47% for the first founder, and then kind of decreases as the number of founders increase. So again, you can use this data when you're to make decisions. Super helpful when you're advising your startups in your portfolio companies, or in the ecosystem. People are like, okay, where do we start? What's the benchmark? This is kind of around 50,000 companies globally. This is the data we see to kind of help make those decisions or even defend those conversations. It's interesting to then split the data across industry. So what you see here is that more specialist industries such as biotech, hardware, energy, which requires more domain-specific expertise, has a larger founding team. Around 20% of biotech companies have 5 founders, for example. And then the more kind of lower barrier to entry, easier industries like edtech, consumer, fintech have either 1 or 2 founders as a majority. So then switching into employee equity. So as I was mentioning, you have the founder's equity, the first founding team building the startup, and then your first, let's say your first 10 hires to build your company. What we see here, and this data is more it's more Middle East and APAC specific, not US. So it's a little bit more accurate, if you like. Around the seed stage is around 12.5% of your 100% is allocated towards your employees. this kind of gives you the view of how the journey of the company is evolving as your valuation is increasing, your ownership percentage is decreasing naturally. Just some benchmarks around how much you'll be diluted per round. So this is where the cap table becomes super important to keep track of, as you start off with 100% or 55%. As you're raising financing, how much are you going to be diluted? And this again gives you some benchmark as you're going through your fundraising journey, and as your company's valuation is increasing, how much you will be diluted. Just another way to show that. So if you have the investor's equity in gray, the employee option pool in light orange, and the founding team's equity in dark orange, you can see around when the company reaches around the 10 to 25 million valuation mark, that's where 50% of the company transitions to investor ownership. If you have questions on designing the team and how much you should pay engineers, how much you should pay your marketing, how much you should pay your first 10 hires, we have a bunch of data around that as well. So we have live equity data and salary compensation data. So let's say you want to, hire a director of marketing in the UAE, grade 6, how much you should be paying them, and how much equity, if you choose to give them equity, should you be giving them over 4 years. Or, a legal counsel in London, how much you should be paying them. So you can use this data in order to accurately compensate. One of the biggest mistakes founders make is they give away too much equity too quickly. So it's good to kind of sense check that with data. And the second really important thing is actually how do you communicate the value of that equity to employees? So there's this kind of the narrative, firstly, as a founder, I don't want to give away any of my company to my employees. They're just employees. Why would I give them my equity? I'm the one putting all the hours. So I want to debunk that, because there's structures that you can put in place, as I was saying, through vesting schedules and options, which you can strategically incentivize your employees. And then secondly is then how do you communicate the value of these options to the employees? One of the great reasons if you have hires here is completely tax-free. So if you're hiring, employees and you'll compensate them, it's a win-win, because firstly, you'll save on cash flow, because you can pull back on cash compensation and give them options instead. And secondly, they'll get tax-free benefits if there's a liquidity event or later down the line. So it's actually a very smart strategy to have stock options as a compensation strategy here in the UAE. Again, by as you go through the rounds, the ESOP pool is reducing. This is interesting. So as I was talking about the first 10 hires, this is typically the amount of equity you'll be giving to the employees. So you first hire about 30%, between 1 to 2.5%. But then as you come from hire 6 down, under 0.05%, right? So really, it's not that much, but obviously as the company valuation increases, that does accumulate. So super helpful to kind of sense check this across your hiring strategy. Refresher grants. So as I was alluding to earlier, so around the Series A stage, around nearly 40% is allocated for refresher grants. What's refresher grants again? It's when you allocate, let's say I have my CTO, I allocate him 2% of ESOP. After 4 years, I can then top him up another 2%. So I need to kind of keep that allocation aside in order to re-incentivize him for another 4 years. Hey, yeah, question? Sure. Sure. Essentially what this is showing is as you're hiring your first 10 hires, how much option percentage are you awarding each employee? And that's represented at the top there, the fully diluted equity percentage at hire. And then the bubbles represent the quantity of that bucket. So 30% for the first hire is between 1 and 2.5%. So that's the most popular band, if you like. For the second hire, it's kind of more split between, you have 19%, so it's more split around there. From hire 4, it's typically, if it's your fourth hire, it's like, okay, it's my fourth hire. How much should I be giving them? Well, around 27% of people give this much, and so on. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. Any other questions until now? Yeah.
Yeah, about the so 50% for another 4 years, so there is a vesting period, or it's a top up like one time.
You can choose. So there's different vesting schedules. The typical vesting schedule is what's called a 4-year vesting period with a 1-year cliff. When that 4 years finishes, you can then choose. You can do again another 4 years vesting, or you can do another 2 years or 1 year. It really is up to you as the business owner. It's your choice how you structure that. Depends. Like if you only need the person for another 1 year, you only give them another 1 year. It's like keep them another year until, if there's a liquidity event or whatever. So it's completely up to you. Yeah.
Are there any classification of different instruments like CDs and?
I'm gonna get onto it. Yeah, I'm coming to it. Yeah. Any other questions while we're here? Okay, let me jump these slides. It's too technical. Okay, tools for success. So, your fundraising, right? What type of equity should you issue? Who has raised funding through safe notes before? Who knows what a safe note is? Okay, I'm going to explain a safe note. Who knows what a convertible note is? Okay. Who knows what preferred stock is? Okay. I'll just quickly explain them. So, you are a startup. You want to raise funding from an investor. Maybe it's a family friend, an angel investor, or a VC. You have different options in order to raise this money. You have what's called convertible instruments, and there's 2 different types, or most common 2 different types of convertible instruments, and you have preferred stock. Let's start with the convertible instruments. What's very common these days, and in the past 4 years, we've seen a huge proliferation of safe notes. They're much more founder-friendly. Safe notes stands for a simple agreement for future equity. Essentially, it's a 3 or 4 page document. It's not very, complicated. It's very simple, and it's essentially a promise that when you're giving me, for example, $200,000, but we're not putting a value on the company. We just put some parameters in place. So what's called a valuation cap or a discount rate. But essentially, I take that $200,000 from you. I use it in my startup to build and grow. When I raise what's called a priced round, so a priced round puts a valuation on the company. It puts a price on the company. When that round is raised, that safe note then gets converted in to equity. and then I get preferred shares. So at this point, I'm not getting any shares in the business. That's why you don't need a big 45-page shareholders agreement. This is great for founders because you can collect funding very quickly. And you see it very common here in the UAE. Some startups have 20, 30, 40, 50 different safe notes they've collected from different investors. And it's great because it's fast. They need to move quickly. They can sign a 3-page, 4-page agreement. The money comes in. It's great for investors as well because they can kind of get in early if they truly believe in the business. They can get in early with some pretty good rates as well because they're coming in very early. And when that converts into stock later down the line, it's great. The convertible notes, this is a debt instrument. So that's something you need to pay back. It has a maturity date. It has interest. So it's less common now. To clarify, this doesn't have any maturity. So if your startup fails, you don't need to pay this back, really. Is that clear on this part? Preferred stock is when you're having what's called a priced round, where you'll go and do a formal negotiation. It normally takes 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes even longer months. You have a 40-page shareholders agreement where you're agreeing on many different things on the business. You're on board rights, on liquidation preferences, a lot of things. And most importantly, you're putting a value on the business. You're saying, okay, I am giving you $200,000 right now for 10% of the business. So this business is worth $2 million right now. And we're declaring that. At this stage, we're not declaring any valuation on the business. So again, founders may use these instruments because they don't want to put a valuation on the business already. They're still in building mode. They don't want it's still early, right? They still have a lot of work to do to establish product market fit. So these are the options founders have. So what does that look like in practice? Well, typically, I go to DIFC, ADGM, I incorporate my business or any of the other free zones. Once I incorporate my business, I'm probably maybe self-funded or friends and family funded. Then I get some angel checks. They're typically safe notes or convertible notes. So what's called a pre-seed round. My seed round, so my first kind of proper chunk of money, can be a combination of both. We see both. But then when we get to Series A, most likely it's a preferred stock round.
For the same note, how do you convert that value that someone gave you into the actual stock? Or into how much stock you're going to get for that specific value? What's the process around that?
Sure. So there's 2 parameters of a safe note you should be aware of. One is called the discount rate, and the other one is the valuation cap. By the way, there's a bunch of resources online which break it down and probably explain it much better than me. We can send after. The discount rate essentially says, typically around 20%, it's saying to the investor, because you are coming in now early, at whatever price I raise in my priced round, you get a 20% discount on that price per share. The alternative is a valuation cap, which says, for example, 20 million. No matter at what price I convert, the maximum valuation that you will convert at is 20 million. So the valuation cap is almost kind of like putting a price on the safe, but not really. And then when it converts, it's always at the price of it's either at the price of your price round minus the discount rate or the valuation cap. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was more asking actually for what's common here.
In terms of discount rates?
Price round, valuation caps, what way does it sit in?
Yeah. might have that data for you. I'll try and dig it out and send it to you. But typically we see around a 20% discount rate. And valuation caps really range as well. But we do have I don't have it in this deck, but I do have that deck for you. What we have seen, the number I have off the top of my head is that 90% of pre-seed rounds now are done via safe, whereas 4 years ago the numbers were kind of switched actually. Yeah. Hey.
So the decision to go for price round lies always with the founders, or is there like a time that the investor, the investor can say how long will it take before you go to the price round? How do you determine that?
I mean, look, I would say, it should sit with the founder. It's your business. It depends on your strategy, your financing strategy. There are investors who have preferences for different types of instruments, and it depends upon, maybe you need to compromise, depending upon if you, really want to work with an investor. But yeah, I would say it lies upon the CEO and the CFO what your financing strategy is. And I would always say think about the next round as well. Whatever you're doing now, kind of model out what your next round looks like as well. Make sure you have enough runway.
And what is common from a seed round to a price round? What's the duration? Is it like 2 years? Is it like an average?
Yeah, it was here. Around 2 years. So price seed to Series A. You can see it used to be around 12 to 16 months. Now it's more like 18 to 24 months now. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, so basically you either give a discount on like a preferred date per stock whenever you get value, right? Or you put a value cap,
Whichever is lower, yes.
Whichever is lower.
Yeah, whichever is more beneficial.
You don't do like a mix of both?
Yeah, you can do it. You can set both, and then whichever is lower gets converted.
Okay.
Yeah, you can set both. So you can have safe notes with only a discount rate. You can have safe notes with only a valuation cap, or you can have safe notes with discount rate and valuation cap.
Okay.
Cool. We've covered a bit of ground. How are we doing for time, guys? Yeah. Okay. Let's see what we can wrap up on. Tools for success. Okay, so a lot of these questions you were asking, we can wreck your brain on Excel, or you can have Carta, which is going to help you a lot. So this is a free tool. It's a safe and note calculator. You put your inputs in. You can model out your different rounds, and it can help you with your post-money valuation. Actually, it has some of the data you were asking for as well in terms of safe note holders as well. So yeah, again, we'll share these afterwards, but this is a great resource. When you get to the next stage, hey, for? A cap table template, yeah, that's also online as well, a cap table template. Once you're ready to do your Series A, you can actually build your deal pro forma in Carta as well. So this is kind of the legal document that you'll give to investors to sign off. And this is where we work very closely with lawyers. So your law firm would have a login to Carta. They can build this for you, all digital, send it out to the investor. You will capture the signature on the platform, and your cap table gets updated. So this whole fundraising process can be streamlined using technology these days. Back in the day, it used to be, here's my Dropbox, here's my Google Drive, here's my DocuSign, here's my Excel's version 8.7 with dilutions calculated incorrectly. Now it's all tracked, monitored, streamlined. This is best practice now.
So we are able to find investors on that platform?
No. We're not a matchmaking. It's not no. It's we're the tool to allow you to do this. Once you have your investor, so there's two things. So before you raise, we have the data room, so you can invite your investors into the data room, and they have full access. You can manage the who has access to what documents, etc. You can see who's opened what, all of that good stuff. That's the data room. Once they become your investor and they're on your cap table, all your investors will have a Carta login as well, which means that they can view their investment into your business. So if you speak to any kind of serial investors here and you mention Carta, be like, oh yeah, I know Carta. They'll have the app on their phone and they can see all of their investments in all of the different companies they've invested in one single login. As the owner of the company, as the startup, you can manage that access. So you may have a strategic investor that you want to show them everything, all of your cap table, all the other investors, or maybe you just want to show them what's relevant to them. You can make that choice with access controls.
You can also make capital calls, right? Or not yet?
Yes, but that's for the fund. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm more interested to also, do you have slides? Are you covering today?
No. That's more targeted at funds. So, like the side notes, this is all for startups we're talking about. We also have a business unit servicing funds. So think Beco Capital, Global Ventures, Outliers VC, the likes of. And they use Carta to manage all of their investments into their portfolio companies and their LPs. So investors get their money from LPs, and you can do capital calls and kind of manage all of your fund accounting through Carta as well. So it's great for investors as well because in one screen they can manage all of their different investments in Carta. So it's kind of like a network effect.
One more question. So this deal pro forma, this is from every stage or only from the price round, or is it from
So a deal former is used at the price rounds.
price round?
I think let's wrap up. Pre-race checklist. Clean up your cap table. Model your round. Understand dilution, deal terms. Know what it means for you, your investors, your employees. Get ready for audit potentially. If you're doing a priced round, make sure your financial statements are audited. And if you do have options already for employees, allow them to exercise them. And make sure you know your fair market value of those ordinary shares. Ways to save on fundraising costs. Use widely accepted forms like the YC Combinator Post Money Safe. We have that template you can use. Choose your investors wisely. Streamline communications. Identify your key diligent risks and have prepared responses. Maybe role play and kind of speak to. Don't go to your best investor first. Educate yourself and be able to make thoughtful decisions quickly and have clean legal docs. And don't wait until a fundraise to get your house in order. Get your house in order early. I think with that, we'll open up for questions, networking, but as far as content goes, I think that's all. Thanks for your attention. It was good, it was interactive in between, so I think a lot of the things got answered.
Thank you. Is it working?
That's so that they can. You just have to speak loudly, but you can hold it.
Okay. So thank you for the presentation. I just have a question, simple question. What is the definition of a startup? Because, for example, I have a company. I established a business, and it's in consultation business, in cybersecurity, in a specific domain, new domain in cybersecurity even. But when I was talking with someone, he told me this is not a startup. Startup means you have a software, you are developing something new like this, which all these things are applicable for. So what is your
Yeah, it's a good
feedback on
question.
this?
Look, typically, first of all, I think your company is a startup, so don't listen to whoever told you that. Typically, when we talk about startups, we talk about companies who are going like this, right? So they're going to the moon and they're trailblazers and they're creating an innovative solution in the market. And they typically go down the venture path, meaning that they raise venture funding. So most of the companies that we serve are venture-backed startups. You can have, LLCs or private companies or SMEs as well. Typically, when we talk about fundraising, we're referring to venture capital fundraising and so venture-backed startups.
There would be tech.
There's mostly a tech element involved. Yeah.
Actually, I started to develop a software along with what we do as traditional business in order to attract venture capital investment and things like this. So
It's a great
just
idea.
to be able to get some fund from this, because I think they think in different ways than the normal investors, the traditional investors, and the VCs are maybe thinking different way. So in order to be able to get both, I started to develop also some software.
I think it's great. I mean, look, ultimately you need to create scale, and you can create scale through technology. And VCs are looking typically for, 10, 20, 30x return on their investment. So, you need to show that level of growth if you are looking to attract VC investment. Hey.
Hi, sorry, my name's Chad. This was great, really, really helpful. If you are an early stage startup and you're pre-revenue and you're focused on, I don't know, $1 million to $3 million, preferably from angel investors, what are the things that are better to over-index on in your pitch deck? Of course, you don't really have much on traction, but is there anything that you recommend to really focus on?
Yeah, good question. Let me refer to this slide. So you said you're pre-revenue?
Yeah, so I'm advising a few different startups that are at early stage.
Okay.
They have good levels of intent,
Mm-hmm.
but they just want to make sure they get that formalized.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I had recently was, should they really shout that out now in their early stage deck, or do they focus more on their advisory board, or they focus more on their actual teams? Of course, the first 3 or 4 things that you need to really shout out.
I mean, it really depends on the business. I would say a combination of all of them. If they're, first thing that comes to mind, if they have very strong IP, that typically can kind of counterbalance against not having revenue already. If they're spending a lot on R&D and they're building something truly innovative and they've built, a lot of product IP, perhaps over-index on that. Team, again, I would say super important as well. Not only advisory board, but also, your key hires, your CTO, your CTO, your chief growth officers. But yeah, if they're pre-revenue, of course, letters of intent always helpful. They were the main things I would say, and also again, if you're pre-revenue, back to my previous point, really show what the projection looks like in your financials, but not in a in a ridiculous way, but in a way that actually shows what the core milestones that you are looking to achieve in the next 12, 18 months. What are you going to be doing with this investment? How are you going to convert that into financials? What's your cost of customer acquisition, if it's that kind of model, etc. Wow.
Anything to stay far away from?
Really, I mean, look, it's always difficult when you're pre-revenue to attract. So a lot of it comes down to the founder and the belief the investor has in that individual. All right. Yes.
One more question. So, at what stage do you attract VC funds? And I mean, initially in the seed rounds, maybe it's more wise to go with angel investors, because I think with VCs there's more requirements. More, is that the case, that you attract VC funds in a later price round stage, and you don't do that in the earlier stages? Is that common?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, look, typically that's what one would think, right? As you go to a Series A, you attract institutional investment, but you're based here, right, in the UAE. So we're very lucky in that sense. In this region, we have a lot of early stage VCs. Why do we have them? Because our region is still very early stage relative to the US and Europe and Singapore, for example. So there are a lot of VCs doing, their first check writers. So not necessarily, you don't need to go to an angel. You can, if you find a good relationship and a strategic kind of alliance with a VC, then work with them, because they're not going to be as strict as the Sequoias or A16Zs. There's plenty of um, VCs here, and I can make some introductions if you want to some early, or at least tell you about some early stage first check writers here. Yeah. So hey.
I have a question regarding the appetite that this region's investors, whether it's VCs, whether it's early check writers, all of these, more specifically to the early stage, to be honest, they have a preference in the market with regards to what they like to invest in. Do they like to invest in more IP related or within revenue generating businesses? Do they like to invest in specific types? Like, is it in the e-commerce space? Is it in a specific space? Like, any data associated to this, just to understand the appetite of this region's investors?
Yeah, good question. What's your, out of curiosity, what's your startup or what's your background?
Incubation / venture builder.
Got you. Okay. So you're coming from like, okay, what kind of venture should we focus on? Yeah. Got you. Yeah. Good question. I mean, if you look at kind of the success in the region already, like fintech obviously is huge. If you follow some of the, some of the larger accelerators like Hub 71, they have a climate tech fund, so that's huge as well. Sectors which are up and coming, I would say, is edtech, which not much has come out of it yet, but it's there's a lot of interest in it. Yeah. Sorry? Health tech as well. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff is still very early in this region, but there's been quite a few interesting announcements. Biosapien, have you heard of that one? Global Ventures and Golden Gate Capital invested in Biosapien, which is they've created a chip which can go on a cancer tumor and can apply chemotherapy directly on the tumor. Sorry?
They are from Sweden.
I'm not sure where she's from. Yeah, Swedish. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so there is. I think your best bet here is to listen to some VC thought leaders online in the region, and just listen to some of their interviews, and you see kind of where they're very open and public about what's interesting for them. So that would be my advice. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the great session. So, I'm coming from the robotics industry.
Okay.
So I'm very new to UAE. So I'm in thought of start something up here as well. I mean, I have the founded a few startups in Sri Lanka. So basically, what is the legal the background and what are the legal things we need to meet to start something here? So because I know like I've read something about that, and there are some the trade license and all these things are in place, right? So is there any for even for a startup, even the early stage, what are the documents or any legal things we need to come across?
Yeah, so your first step would be to incorporate your company, and you can do that in any of the free zones. Depending on your company, different free zones have different benefits. There's the Silicon Oasis, there's the IFC, there's Internet City, there's Abu Dhabi ADGM, there's In5, thank you. So that would be kind of your first port of call. Speak to them, they'll be able to have all the kind of step-by-step process of how you should incorporate. Once you're incorporated, you're off to the races. You can do whatever you want.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Teddy.
Thank you.